So over here we have 5600 hashes per second. Right down here we have 527 hashes, and you can see the amount of time it built it in or loaded it in the RAM. So basically you want to get your memory initialized as low as possible, and that just means that your RAM's faster, that you was able to dump more data into it. Thus, your RAM's also faster for the CPU, moving data back and forth as well. You can see my score, which is on Random benchmark. Random X Monero benchmark. That's currently the highest score, but I just blew it away. And you can see how this took an extra 200 milliseconds compared to my, 150 milliseconds compared to my newest one. Now I'm gonna run one right now. You could use the, because right now I'm running 10,000 nonces, but if you write, yeah, I'm running 10,000 nonces. If you use 100,000, you usually get higher scores, but it takes too long. And this benchmark's also really dependent on oh man, that was a 46. Never mind, that wasn't a 5. Oops. On the Windows memory scheduler. Oh, yeah, scheduler, not memory. I'm so good. Okay, so you're gonna want to keep this totally off. You want to put your memory frequency first, keep everything on auto, and then slam your memory frequency all the way up. So first start at you start at 2133, then just go to 266, and then from there on you have to go, you can go every other memory frequency up like that, up until you hit 2933. And after you hit 2933, you have to go each step up until you hit your max. This RAM kit I'm running 3200 megahertz CL14 by G-Skill B-Die, Samsung B-Die. On this CPU, it can only do 3266 with voltage slammed everywhere and loose timings and everything auto, and performs quite terribly actually, and it's also quite unstable. So go next one down, 3200. It is stable. You can tighten up the timings, but you can't tighten up the timings nearly as well as you can, because you have to have CL16 or 14 depending on on your RAM or memory controller combination for that, and compared to CL11 for the 3133, it's just way better. So aim for this if you have aim for anything over 3000, anything over 2933 to 3200. Aim for that on first gen Ryzen. If you have a second gen if you have a first gen Threadripper, then you can usually go up to 3600 megahertz on the RAM, but I would usually stick around 3466 and below, to 3466 to 3200 megahertz if you have a first gen Threadripper. And if you have a second gen Threadripper and Ryzen processor, then I would still stick to 3600 and below. 3200 is a nice spot. 3333 is what I found on first and second gen Threadrippers and Ryzens to have the best usual performance without having to have golden samples of anything. Put this as high as you can while being reasonable. Yeah, this CPU can go to 4 gigahertz, but it needs 1.5 volts, or it can have 3.975 at 1.38125. And then yes, you want to set this in manual. Don't set an offset. I mean, it's going to be mining anyways, so it doesn't really matter. SoC voltage. Now this is interesting. The CPU is you don't want to daily your CPU more than 1.4 volts daily. 1.425 is absolute maximum I would do daily or mining anything. If you do so that high, then make sure you have really good cooling. But that's a good spot. And if I want to do, for SoC voltage, you can do 1.3 volts daily, even though I don't recommend that for daily. I recommend 1.2 maximum, but you don't actually know what their motherboard is sending out to your SoC, so you take that risk. But at the same time, when it's on auto, this is at usually it's usually at 0.9 volts or 900 millivolts. And when you first start overclocking your RAM, once you hit your first crash, well, first of all, you want to set your RAM voltage to 1.35 on whatever RAM you have, even if it's like some cheap stuff. But depending on if it's Samsung B-die, then you can do 1.55. You can do 1.5 easily daily, 100% guarantee safe. And if you have Micron Revision, depending on what memory ICs chips you have on your sticks and how good your cooling is, and yes, you actually do need to cool your RAM. They do get really warm, like really warm. And Samsung B-die is temperature sensitive, so if you have Samsung B-die, then make sure to put a fan, or else it'll crash over time. And yeah, so start with your RAM voltage at 1.35, then go to 1.55 if you have Samsung B-die or Revision E, and then just go from there. Like this can go at 1.8 volts maximum this motherboard allows. Samsung B-die, you can go at like 1.22 and you'll be fine, but it's not the most recommended thing. It's red. It's not a big deal. I've ran that for a while. It's purple. It means it's good. And then for SoC, and if you type in 1.3, that should be purple. That should really be purple. If you type in 1.4, that should be red. If you type in 1.5, well, you just killed your memory controller and everything else, and everything that's the rest of the part of the SoC. You just killed it right there. If you literally boot with that, you're gonna kill your chip. And it allows you to do that. How high does it allow you to go? Oh man. Oh boy. That's instant death. I didn't know it can do that. Anyways, so after you go to, you're at 0.9 usually, then you go to 0.95 after you hit your first wall. After you set your RAM voltage, then you want to keep raising your memory voltage frequency till you hit till you crash, and then raise your SoC voltage to this and keep on raising your memory. And then once your thing crashes again, just keep on raising it by 25 millivolt increments. For me, I found this to be my most stable voltage for my SoC and this RAM. Now, you can go higher, you can go much higher, but the thing is, your SoC gets usually less stable with the higher the voltage is. So you usually want to keep it low. Your memory overclocking performance usually decreases with the higher this is. But like, so let's say if I was having trouble to booting this, if I want to get to 3200 and it just wasn't working, or if I had a tight memory timing and just wasn't working, sometimes you can just like shove this to 1.2, 1.25, and it will like force itself. It will usually kind of like boot, but just don't. Just keep it under 1.1. Don't go over 1.15. And then after that, we're gonna have to mess with our VRM settings. Just set okay, for Asus motherboards, if you set it to level 1, it will overshoot. So let's say if you put 1.4 volts as the target, you will be getting 1.45, 1.5. You'll be getting 1.5. And with level 2, you would get slightly, just a tad over what you set. So if you set 1.4 volts, it'll give you 1.41. So, and that's what we want. And just set current capability as high as it can go. It doesn't really matter. Switching frequency. VRM is quite mediocre at best. When you're trying to get your highest clocks and what have you, you want to set this as high as you can, unless you have a nice motherboard with lots of a nice 8-phase or something similar. Then just set this as high. It basically has less. It reduces the efficiency by a ton, but it also increases your voltage stability, and it's more consistent. So whenever, depending on when your CPU hits the VRM with a load, it won't die so much. Extreme, T-probe, doesn't really matter. I would have set it to extreme, but apparently I didn't. Oh well. Extreme, blah blah blah. Extreme, blah blah blah. Same thing for SoC, just set it at level 2. Now, depending on your motherboard, it could be the exact opposite. It could be that level 4 is the one that you want. Because I know in gigabytes, like extreme and high, just put it on high. Okay. So now these are my RAM timings. So the stuff that you see on the left is what the motherboard booted with, because I had it set to auto. 2133 megahertz on auto, because stuff. So you can just copy the timings. You can just, like, cheat basically. See if I can focus better. Yeah, no. Now, depending on your motherboard, they may call these settings different things. They may capitalize different parts of the letter, maybe in different order. And it may, or if you have a 3rd gen Ryzen or what have you, different CPU, you set some of these things. Depending on your motherboard, it may not even be available to you. And these timings, I said, what are some decent timings I can use? And yeah, I'm actually going to change this to that, because that's actually not half bad. So actually use these. A lot of these can go lower, but I haven't bothered. Usually you want to stay around 68 to 48 ohms. Usually at stock, it's usually at 60, but it usually also goes to 53. My other RAM kit, my other Samsung VDI RAM kit used to like 53. This one likes 48. So that's that. 1T is like 1T versus 2T. It's basically it's significantly harder for not much gain, but it tightens up everything, really. Basically, I'm not good at explaining. You want to disable gear down mode. Gear down mode basically is like 1.5T. It's like super easy to run, and you do get a performance benefit, but only do that if you can't run 1T. So disable that if you can run 1T. Power down, you just want to disable that. If you're having trouble booting hard RAM settings or anything, you can just play with these. Usually Q7 or disabling will work pretty well. You can usually turn that off if you're having trouble with this off, or I think either 7, 3, or 5 works for me sometimes. I haven't really bothered to go too hard, even though I got the world record for the 1700. So if any of you guys actually just copy these and actually do what I say, you can beat me. Anyways, you don't need to mess with that unless, well, you just don't. I just set drive strength to 20 ohms, and yeah, it's if you know, or if you think that you can boot and post use RAM settings, if you're having trouble training, you can just set this to 10 and it will try and train the memory 10 times in a row to get it to post. But usually on auto it's actually 3. So this only really matters if you're let's see if you can see this one right here, the bottom one. Only really matters if you're pushing like 1.8 volts or higher. On Samsung BuriedOne, it doesn't like more than 1.9 volts for this, I believe. So depending on your motherboard. So yeah, this can go a lot farther in performance. Also, I found that you want to putting on Ada and Geekbench, it gives you the worst performance, and putting on Cinebench 15 is pretty good, but Cinebench 11.5 is I found to give me the best scores. Now, depending if you have like a multi-die chip or what have you, you can play with AMD CV memory interleaving, leave it on auto. I have a 1700. You can use ECC apparently. It's cool. There's some stuff you can play with. You can disable some stuff and hopefully hope for more stability. You can do PCIe Gen 1 or stuff. Oh, if you have BCLK, use your BCLK. Like if you have BCLK, just overclock with your BCLK. Just set your BCLK to anything above 100, and it would totally gain you performance. And yeah, but don't do that. Don't touch your BCLK if you have an M.2 drive or NVMe drive or what have you, because they will very likely corrupt it. So only do that if you have a SATA drive, and just can potentially corrupt a SATA drive. Very unlikely, but just use a hard drive, mate, or something you don't have data that you really want to keep. If you're gonna use your BCLK, because you can get this RAM, because this is a big jump from 3133 to 3200, so you can get to 3140 megahertz and get a decent amount of increase performance just by using your BCLK, and also raise your CPU core up. Now, like I said, I have different RAM settings and what have you. Usually just keep your core voltage at, so this is for Ryzen, keep your core voltage at 1.38, maybe a little bit, maybe 1.39, but just don't go over 1.4, and just see how high your core clock can go. And other than that, just see how high your RAM can go. As you can see, I have multiple profiles. 5300 is the most rock solid dailyable thing. Like, you will not crash that. So if I load that up, so you can, if your RAM's not as good, you can just copy these. That should be 15, 11. You can see the difference. A lot of these are auto. I also found that lowering TCKE and lowering your TRFC and TWR and TWR a lot helps a lot. So that's if you're having some trouble, or if your RAM's not as good, and also if your RAM's not even worse, then I'll load profile 8 so you can see. Just before I was showing you my best one, so you can see. This is probably where your cheaper RAM kits are going to top out, like the cheaper Hynix ones or something, maybe AFR ones. I mean, auto is mostly fine. You just need to configure most of your primaries and stuff, but it does gain from your secondary and tertiary timings. Yeah, and it's okay. My new one's 5641. Okay, so these are going to be the tweaks you do within software to get the maximum amount of hash rate. So just type in Windows key control for control panel. Normally, if you've never changed this before, it is categories is what Windows usually comes with. Now, you will need to upgrade to Windows 10 Pro if you have not, and you can do that by just going Windows. Just go click that, and you can upgrade. You can download the thing for free. You just won't be activated. You still have to activate it, but you can still use it. And there's no watermark on, at least on 1903. So that's that. Anyway, so this is the way it normally comes up the control panel. So just go to category and just set it to small icons, and then you'll be able to see administrative tools. Double click that. Then you will see local security policy. Now you can't get this far with using home, but you just won't see local security policy, which is what you need. So double click that, and then you're going to want to click expand local policies, and click user rights assignments. You scroll down to the bottom, then you'll see lock in memory pages. You need to double click that. Add user group. Typically it would just say check names, and it'll do it auto check the names for you. Since I've already done that, we don't need to do that. Just click cancel, and you can see the name of my computer right there. I typically would click OK and what have you, but I already done that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, MS system configuration, increase virtual memory. Now, if you want to run higher frequencies, then you need to enable this and type in 6,000 to limit you around to 6,000 megabytes worth of RAM, or 6 gigabytes, because if you have Samsung BDI. If you don't have Samsung BDI, then don't worry about this. Typically, it just go as low as you can go, but we're not doing that right now. So just go to advanced option. My bad. Just go to, oh yeah, so that's that. Then another thing is Windows key E, this PC, right click, properties, then go to advanced system settings, and you go to, you want to set everything. Okay, this is another day. The footage got corrupt, so I'm just gonna reshoot this part. Like I was saying before, we need to adjust for best performance. Just leave that on. It's gonna get rid of anti-aliasing, so it's gonna look a bit uglier, but that's all fine. Change your virtual memory to 4800 to whatever you want. Just bump it up somewhat, however much you can. And if it was on a multi-card mining rig, you would want to bump this up to as much as your SSD or hard drive would allow, especially if you're running a 4 gig card. But we already have that set done, so that's that. And then we also want to do the last thing, which is you just type the Windows key, power down. Then we're gonna go to power options, go high performance, and this is what the main thing you want to check. Go to advanced power settings, go to processor power management, and you want to make sure this is at 100%, because at stock the computer has a minimum processor state of 5%. You want to set that to 100, so it's always boosting. But yeah. I also have a few more things to say, like software-wise, of like what you should have downloaded on your computer. You can download Ryzen Master. I don't suggest it. But if you have a 3rd gen Ryzen, you can do overclocking per CCD or each chiplet or whatever. But we don't. I have something at 100. So also, you're very limited to what you can change in the memory options, and frankly, you won't be able to get anywhere near performance if you just use Ryzen Master. But if your BIOS is lacking, or if you just want to do a view through Windows, this is a way you can do it. And another thing you want to have or use is Ryzen timing checker. You can make sure that your motherboard put in, or the timings you set in the BIOS. See, this is what I'm running right now. This is just updated my motherboard, and I forgot to save it in my profile, and yeah, so it's just some random stuff. Anyways, so you can check, make sure that your stuff applied with this. Another thing you can use is a Typhoon burner to check if to check what type of RAM you have. Is quite important to like I was saying, this is quite important to knowing what memory you have and how much voltage you can put in, and what the characteristics of that memory is. And you can see what I got. It's not bad. Another thing you want to have is Prime 95. Just check that, you know. Oops. Ignore that. I accidentally deleted something. To check your core stability, make sure your voltage isn't too low. But mining Random X is way less intensive. Like, uses like, I don't know, maybe 10%, 15% less power than a power virus of Prime 95 would be. Another thing you want to have is Prime 95. You can just use it to check if your core is stable, if you're, make sure your voltage isn't too low, and there's also an option to test your memory controller out and to stress your memory controller and the RAM. But mining Random X uses about, I would say, about 10% less power than Prime 95 would. Like I was saying before, some other piece of software that you probably want is, especially if you're a noob. I'm still kind of a noob too. So, the Ryzen RAM calculator. So just basically put in what generation CPU you have, the type of memory you have. You use Typhoon burner to figure that out. Memory rank, whether it's single or dual rank, and frequency, blah blah blah. You can either put that in yourself, or you can just or you can import an XMP, or you can just auto generate it. Then you can calculate the safe values for that speed, and you can go even faster. And these values are usually like pretty good. You may have to tweak some of them up or down, and it's a good baseline. And then there's also some other stuff. I find this one for 2RFC calculator to be just useful. The rest of them Yeah, they're here. Oh, and then mem test. Okay, so wait. Can't spell apparently. There we go. Mem test. Yeah, so you just use this. Type in like 2000 megs of RAM. Do test. And now you just got do multiple instances of these, and it will just report back if it finds any copying errors. And it's important. It's real useful for seeing if your RAM's rock solid. Usually you at least want to go up to 400% coverage, and then after that you're pretty stable. The more RAM you have, the longer it takes. Yeah. Also, IDA64 is also pretty useful because we have the latency test, because Random X likes low latency big time, more than anything else. So just using some random settings I have in the BIOS, see what we get. You want to be aiming for like under 70 nanoseconds. 60s is good. Like that's not that good, but yeah, you want to be aiming in the 60s when you're mining. So yeah, I almost forgot to show you how to run this, so just go command prompt, and then I'll have this in the description. Just copy and paste this into that and replace it with your computer's name. Press enter. There you go. You can also get help that way. Just read the README. And then this right here is just a bunch of testing I did. So you can see. Testing of things on the motherboard and motherboard settings and within the Random X benchmark. So yeah.